Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this will be the Combat Series episode number 165 for you guys today. And to kick off the Combat Series this week, I'll be sharing my fight summary on the fight that took place in the heavyweight division between Oleksandr Usyk and Rico Verhoeven. So that big heavyweight championship fight that took place in Egypt, it was Oleksandr Usyk who defeated Rico Verhoeven in controversial fashion by knockout in the 11th round to successfully retain his unified heavyweight championships in the sport of boxing. Now, there was honestly a lot of controversy in this fight between Oleksandr Usyk and Rico Verhoeven, where Oleksandr Usyk found a way to knock out Rico. And honestly, before the 11th round, Rico, a kickboxer that came over to the sport of boxing in his second professional fight, nearly pulled off the biggest upset in combat sports history. In his second professional fight, nearly defeated a pound-for-pound great, the greatest heavyweight in the heavyweight division today in Oleksandr Usyk. And heading into the 11th round, the final round of the fight, I had it scored 7 rounds to 3 in favor of Rico Verhoeven. And there was more controversy that happened in round 11, where Oleksandr Usyk turned it up a notch in the championship rounds, was landing punches and flurries, finding his groove in the inside, and landed a picture-perfect uppercut in the inside to knock down Rico Verhoeven. Now, if the fight went on to the 12th and final round, if you're judging round 11, that would have been a 10-8 round in favor of Oleksandr Usyk heading into the 12th and final round. But to Usyk's defense, I could understand his frustration because Rico, when he got knocked down, purposely spit out his mouthpiece. He was answering the referee's 10 count, but got way more than 10 seconds to recover. That's why Oleksandr Usyk was pacing back and forth at the ring, pissed off because he knew Rico got over on the referee and got more than a 10 count to recover. So that's when Oleksandr Usyk rushed in with 11 to 10 seconds left in the round, was landing punches and flurries. And me watching it at home, you could clearly hear the bell ring, where Oleksandr Usyk was still landing several punches after the bell rang. And honestly, the referee lost control and didn't understand the situation of what the hell was really going on. He saw Oleksandr Usyk landing punches on Rico. Rico was looking like he was taking the punches, but the referee waved off the fight and said he can no longer continue, which ended in Oleksandr Usyk getting a controversial knockout victory against Rico Verhoeven. I call bullshit. And the crazy thing about it is, the fight, we would have never known what would have happened in the 12th and final round between these two respective heavyweights. And the crazy thing is, 2 out of 3 of the judges had it tied 95-95 heading into the 11th round. If you have 20/20 vision, you could clearly see that this fight was not that close, and Rico Verhoeven was in full control against Oleksandr Usyk. I'm not sure how these judges had to score 95-95. If you're going to try to protect your golden boy in Oleksandr Usyk, one of the best in the heavyweight division, try to do it from an unbiased standpoint, because there's no way in the world that this man, Rico Verhoeven, nearly had as many power punches as Oleksandr Usyk landed punches heading into the championship rounds. I just don't understand. That's why boxing is not taken serious by a lot of people in the combat sports world, because judges corrupt fights. But this fight between Rico and Oleksandr Usyk was actually crazy. Rico came out of the gates with a great game plan, putting the pressure on Oleksandr Usyk, landing punches, landing the power punches in the inside, taking full control of the fight. Nobody saw that coming. And Rico landed strong hooks mixed in with feints and was dangerous on the inside between himself and Oleksandr Usyk. And Rico was a much bigger heavyweight. Yeah, Oleksandr Usyk has been in there with bigger heavyweights than himself, like Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Derek Chisora. But Rico found a way to actually use the size advantage against Oleksandr Usyk, who is a natural-born cruiserweight that moved up to the heavyweight division. He's finally the guy that used his weight and his size to advantage. He was honestly bullying Oleksandr Usyk, using his footwork, landing punches and combinations, and was great boxing off the front foot and the back foot. That unpredictable, awkward style in boxing actually works. That's why Rolly Romero, whether you guys want to admit it or not, yeah, he's gotten knocked out twice, but just a fighter and example, that's why he's been successful in the sport. Outside of those knockout losses against Gervonta Davis and Isaac Pitbull Cruz, the awkward style and being strong actually works in your favor of boxing, because people don't know how to solve the style. But getting back on track, Oleksandr Usyk had no answer for Rico fighting in the inside. Like, every time Oleksandr Usyk tried to crack the code and find success in the inside, Rico Verhoeven would close the back door on him, and then he would find himself being in control of the fight again. The power and the unpredictable defense from Rico was just too much for Oleksandr Usyk to handle as the rounds went on. You could clearly see the frustration started to set in to Oleksandr Usyk. And Oleksandr Usyk even tried everything and tried to throw everything on the kitchen sink against Rico. Like, he even fought in the southpaw stance, the orthodox stance, and still couldn't find his footing offensively. Like, this was insane to watch Saturday in the sport of boxing. But I do give Oleksandr Usyk credit, because in the championship rounds, round 11, round 12, I don't care how good you are. I don't care how many rounds you're winning. That's where championship experience kicks in. And that's where you could see who was the real boxer and who was the real kickboxer, translating to the sport of boxing. Because Oleksandr Usyk in round 11 was letting his hands fly. The inexperienced Rico Verhoeven did not know how to handle those rounds from rounds 9, 10, and 11. I think he was starting to run out of gas in round 11. And, of course, made the mistake in the inside, sitting like a standing tree, not moving around and not understanding the situation. Like, hey, I might be up. I don't need to take unnecessary risk. He stayed in the inside, stayed in the pocket for too long, and got caught with a picture-perfect uppercut, which landed in a knockdown in favor of Oleksandr Usyk that would have got a 10-8 round if the fight continues to the 12th and final round. But the way how Rico performed in this fight and the way how the fight was going, and let's just say the judges had Rico up, or 2 out of 3 judges had Usyk up, that 12th and final round really would have gave us the answer to really who could have won the fight. And honestly, based off of Rico dominating majority of the fight, they should have let this go on for the 12th and final round. Now, a lot of people say Usyk would have got the knockout, but how do we know? We never got there. And we got one of the worst stoppages in boxing history. Hell, this might be the worst heavyweight stoppage in boxing history for what we got. A fighter that is still aware of this situation, just getting hit with punches and flurries after the bell rang. You can't tell me that's not one of the worst stoppages in boxing history. You cannot tell me that Oleksandr Usyk was going to get bailed out by 2 out of 3 of the judges, and definitely got bailed out by that referee Saturday night in the sport of boxing in Egypt. But I got one more quick take before I end the segment, and I want to share my thoughts on outsiders participating in competing in the sport of boxing. Now, honestly, performances like this, for what we got from Rico, getting in the ring against Oleksandr Usyk, a pound-for-pound great, the best heavyweight that the heavyweight division has to offer today in the sport of boxing. Performances like this is what really makes the sport of boxing look bad. And I've said that the sport of boxing is one of, if not the hardest sport to compete in. But now my stance looks insane, because this is the second time in the last 3 years that the best heavyweights in the world have been outclassed and outboxed and honestly defeated by outsiders. Look at Francis Ngannou when he fought Tyson Fury in late 2023. That had no business of being a professional bout. But Francis Ngannou scored the knockdown heard around the world in the 3rd round. And honestly, if it wasn't for Tyson Fury landing the pity jabs and the pity punches to wow the judges to help him squeak by a win against Francis Ngannou should have been the first person to defeat Tyson Fury, not Oleksandr Usyk. And then you look at this fight last Saturday in the sport of boxing, Rico, a professional kickboxer in his second professional fight, taking Oleksandr Usyk to his limits in his second professional fight. So it makes the sport of boxing look bad that outsiders have exposed the best heavyweights that we've seen over the last 3 to 5 years in the sport. And I don't care about the rankings in the heavyweight division. I don't give a damn about the politics. Rico deserves an automatic rematch against Oleksandr Usyk by the end of 2026 for those heavyweight titles. Even Turki Al-Sheikh, the boss in charge, knows it, that Egypt and the WBC rankings should not be next, and Rico deserves an automatic rematch against Oleksandr Usyk based off the huge controversy that happened in the 11th round, and we got robbed of seeing what really could have happened and transpired in the 12th round. Now, the crazy thing about my take is you don't see professional boxers going to MMA trying to compete in the UFC octagon against the pound-for-pound greats in the UFC. Why? Because they would get their ass kicked in a matter of 30 to 45 seconds, either getting knocked out or submitted. And you don't see that happening, the boxers trying to cross over to the MMA. No, MMA fighters, kickboxers are more confident than ever that they can transform themselves into professional boxers and hang with the best professional boxers in the sport today. And you're seeing that from MMA fighters and kickboxers putting on boxing gloves and looking like naturals. That's why this the world of boxing is in a terrible state right now after this fight. And a lot of people, based off of these performances, believe it's not hard to transition to the sport of boxing. And this all started when you looked at Conor McGregor and Dana White, the business that they did with Floyd Mayweather and Al Haymon to make that professional fight happen in 2017, excuse me. That had no business being a professional fight. That should have been an exhibition, a circus event. But it all started there, and that's what opened the door for celebrities like Jake Paul, Logan Paul, KSI to believe that they can hang in the world of boxing with the best of the best and put on these events. I'm serious, guys. Like, this performance by Oleksandr Usyk, who in my opinion was the #1 ranked fighter in the world, heading in this fight against Rico Verhoeven, makes the sport of boxing look bad. Now we might see another kickboxer, another MMA fighter. Maybe we get Alex Pereira in the boxing ring before it's all said and done, before he retires from his MMA career. I mean, you already see Francis Ngannou step in the ring with guys like Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. Like, this is a bad look, guys. But at the end of the day, I do believe that Oleksandr Usyk should give Rico Verhoeven his fair rematch by the end of 2026. And as great as Oleksandr Usyk is, in a rematch that you should grant this guy, you need to put him away to end any controversial talks of the first fight even being as close as it was or as competitive as it was. That's the route I would go. But those are my thoughts on the Oleksandr Usyk and Rico Verhoeven heavyweight championship fight that took place Saturday night in the sport of boxing.